Borderlands 3 is by far the best game in the series. I don't know what everyone's smoking when they say it's the worst. Borderlands 2 is the best game of all time.
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's the MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Do you have one of these two opinions? If so, you may be a part of the divide in this community. You see, before Borderlands 3 came out, the Borderlands community felt like one big happy family. But then, tragedy struck and mom and dad got a divorce, aka the release of Borderlands 3.
That one didn't age quite so well.
Now, when Borderlands 3 came out, all seemed fine, but as time went on, the player base began quitting Borderlands 3 and returning to Borderlands 2, thus creating the divide.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
So today, we're going to take a trip back in time and find out how one game split an entire community. First, we're going to start with what in my eyes is the most criticized part of Borderlands 3, the story. Borderlands 3's story seemed to piss off a lot of people when they realized just how badly the game was actually written.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
The villains, Tyreen and Troy Calypso, were genuinely terrible, and what made this even worse was they had to follow up what is arguably one of the best video game villains of all time, Handsome Jack.
So.
You bastard! I'm gonna...
Language.
Now obviously, it would be absolutely insane to think that the twins would have been better than Handsome Jack, but that's not to say that I couldn't see them ever working out as good villains, as I believe if they were written better and less obnoxious, they would have had much better reception from the players. Like seriously, who thought this was a good idea?
Memories. Our followers love it. Recruitment is skyrocketing.
Moving on, we're going to skip Ava and the ending as I have an entire video dedicated to how bad she was written into the game, so go check that out after this if you haven't already. I'll make sure to link it in the description below. Next, I want to talk about loot, specifically legendary gear. In Borderlands 2, legendaries felt very rare, and because they felt rare, it made getting one that much more exciting. I mean hell, sometimes you go an entire playthrough without having one drop, which isn't entirely a good thing. But on the flip side, in Borderlands 3, they drop way too often.
Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. Another one. And another one.
Making them feel a lot less special than in its predecessor. Not only that though, they also made your first playthrough feel almost trivial, as the legendaries in Borderlands 3 are all so powerful that it's possible to beat the whole campaign with one legendary gun you dropped at the beginning. This, I feel, is a huge point of contention in the Borderlands community, as some people argue that Borderlands 2's drop rates are abysmal compared to 3's, then others argue that Borderlands 3's drop rates are far too high compared to Borderlands 2. This makes the divide pretty clear, but let's continue on with the art style. Borderlands 1, 2, and the pre-sequel have very similar feeling art styles that the community really gravitated towards. So when Borderlands 3 was revealed and the art style went from looking like this to this, it was safe to assume that people wouldn't like it very much. Now, in my opinion, I like the Borderlands 3 art style. To me, it's a nice refreshing change that I think we needed. But it also had its drawbacks, like particle effects, which honestly may blind and even possibly give you a seizure if you play for too long. I personally have had times where I play for a while and begin to develop a slight headache as the bright colors and explosions on my screen are very frequent and highly oversaturated. The previous Borderlands games definitely had a better art style, in my personal opinion. The next point on our list is endgame, as Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3's endgames are very different from each other. Take the raid bosses for example in Borderlands 2. Each raid boss was a farmable boss, much like any other you would encounter throughout the game. But they were juiced up to the max, meaning large health pools and big damage for a good test of skill and build benchmarking, which the community loved. Then on the flip side, we have raid bosses in Borderlands 3. These bosses were gated behind takedowns, which if you don't know what a takedown is, let me explain real quick. The basic explanation of a takedown would be fighting through areas of enemies to then progress to a boss. After the first boss, you would rinse and repeat to get to the actual boss, aka the raid boss. The community was mixed on takedowns as they were the only way to farm raid bosses because there weren't any standalone raid bosses separate from takedowns like in Borderlands 2 until the Director's Cut DLC that added Hemovorus the Invincible, which came out April 8th, 2021. Almost 2 years after the launch of Borderlands 3. It's safe to say that this was a little too late, but we can't talk about endgame without talking about OP levels versus mayhem levels. Borderlands 2 had OP levels, which would scale enemies higher by 1 level for every run that you completed at Digistruct Peak up to a total of 10. Meaning, if you were level 72, enemies would be level 82. Borderlands 3, on the other hand, had Mayhem mode, 10 levels of increasingly harder difficulty, which you could argue was kinda similar to OP levels, except Mayhem mode had one big problem: modifiers.
No. Wait.
Modifiers made playing Mayhem mode one of the most annoying things you could do. Gearbox did eventually add Mayhem 11 on November 9th, 2020, which removed all modifiers, but yet again, this was a case of too little, too late.
I'm beginning to see a pattern here that I'm not so sure if I like.
Another reason fans are split on Borderlands 3 is the Nerf Apocalypse. I'm not going to speak too much on this as Thick Fillet made a much more detailed video that I'll link in the description for you to watch after this. But what I will say is the vast majority of Borderlands players play the game to create characters that feel powerful. Hell, even overpowered.
You're goddamn right.
And the Nerf Apocalypse did the exact opposite of that, pretty much taking all the fun aspects of tinkering around and creating characters using insane synergies and interactions, whether bug or not, completely out of the game, making the build pool smaller and my Recursion Amara build very sad. This was a point that made the Borderlands community split even more, as most people that love Borderlands 2 love it because of the wacky and broken build potential, which further adds to the replayability. Then on the other hand, Borderlands 3 players felt as if the nerfs were needed or else the game would get stale due to content being too easy. Now that we've recapped all this, I'd like to talk about if one game is genuinely better than the other. In my opinion, almost everything that one game does well, the other does bad. Here are my examples. Borderlands 2's gunplay and movement feels way worse, in my opinion, than Borderlands 3's. But Borderlands 2's farming and story is miles better than Borderlands 3's. It's almost like they complement each other in a way. So I personally don't think that there is an objectively better game, but I do prefer Borderlands 2 over 3, due to the build potential and overall feel of the game. But that's the story of how one game split an entire community. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinions. And if you've enjoyed this video, consider leaving me a like as it helps me out a ton. And if you'd like to join our community, hit that sub button. I'd appreciate it as I try to upload videos like this every Friday. Also, I've started streaming on Twitch at about 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'd love to have you there. Alright, last thing, I promise. I just created a Discord for our community that I'll link down below, so go check it out. I'd love to see you in there. Anyways, that's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed. See you in the next one. Have a good day, and goodbye.